May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Narcissus Robert Quagliata. I hope I'm saying that right, Robert. Actually, I call him Narcissus, but you know that old calling him Robert. That was long ago. Long ago, he was Robert. I mean, over 50 years ago, way back in the past. But he was a Shunryu Suzuki student. He was the first director of the city center building. He is, I would say, probably the considered the greatest stained glass, I don't like saying the greatest. He is a well-recognized stained glass master who's done some incredible projects with stained glass. Now, if you go to cuke.com and write Narcissus, Narcissus, on the site search box, there's a page for him there, and already had a great deal on him. The top thing for him there on his Cuke page is, he didn't use that page anymore. Uh-oh. Okay. I fixed it. I went to his website and, I went to the page for Quagliata on Cuke.com and I clicked on his website that I had there, and it was no longer his website. And then I went and found what is his website, narcissusquagliata.com. NarcissusQuagliata.com. Yeah, it's impressive. And you can learn a lot about him there and see incredible stained glass work he's done. Now, you can see some of his work also on his Cuke page, but the work you can see at his website is, it's leaps and bounds beyond that in terms of presentation. I was just looking at Amazon.com at his books. He's got a book coming out in March called Finding Your Own Voice Out. No, it's Finding Your Own Voice, and it will be out by the end of March. And but I'm looking on Amazon. He's got this book of poems called Mutant Poems, Sketches, New Works, 1968 to 2018. English, Italian, and Spanish editions. Of course, it's got color images in it. So it's $42, marked down from $50. Then there's William Morris, Glass, Artifact, and Art, which he co-authored with Henry Goldsaller. That's another beautiful book. Then there's a book about his work called Narcissus Quagliata, Archetypes and Visions in Light and Glass. And then there's Narcissus Quagliata, Painting with Light, Italian edition, by Hector, by Borel, Hector Rivero. Then there's a book by him here. I'm just reading with this. Stained Glass from Mind to Light, an inquiry into the nature of the medium. Gateways to Dreaming. The Dome of Light. Now that's this fantastic work he did in Taiwan. A Gateway to Dreaming, a tour and the story of the Formosa Boulevard station at Kaohsiung. He did this massive ceiling in the station, I think a train station in Kaohsiung, a big city in Taiwan. And then there's Narcissus, Quagliata, Light Fusions, Gateway into the Night, and other works. But it's not by him. So he's got books by him and about him. Yeah, pretty impressive. So let's give Narcissus Quagliata a call and see what he has to say. But first, let's have our pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, hit pause if you have such a mind and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're in the right state of mind, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Narcissus Robert Quagliata a call.
Yes,
We connected.
we did.
Wow.
Where are you, in Bali?
Yeah.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to hear your voice. And you're in Mexico. Where in Mexico?
I'm in a place called Valle de Bravo, which is it's in the mountains. My house is looking on over a lake, 2 hours west of Mexico City.
Mm.
I have a very beautiful house on a ridge with a very big view. It's wonderful here.
Ah. I used to live in Mexico City, so I wish we could come visit you.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm here half the year. The other half, I'm in LA working in a glass studio. But more and more, I'm here, and less and less, I'm in LA.
Where's your glass studio?
It's called Judson Studio. It's not mine. I'm sort of the senior artist that generated this extension into a new way of using glass. So this traditional studio embraced my technology, and it's using it. It's in South Pasadena.
Oh, really?
Highland Park.
Really?
Yeah. It has 2 locations, one in Highland Park and 3 blocks away across the freeway, 110. It's in South Pasadena.
Oh, wow.
The new part is in South Pasadena.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what are you working on now?
I'm working on, I teach online a lot. I am, because I'm 80, I have decided to generate a series of classes online that are an effort to pass on everything I've invented in the field of glass, so that it can be used by other people. I learned all this stuff because of massive investment that I received from companies and the chance to do large architectural projects. So individual artists could never afford the money to do all the testing. So what I'm doing is essentially I'm packaging all the knowledge that I have on generating images with the glass, not on the glass, with the glass in the kilns, and I am creating a language and a syntax. On the side of that, I also am generating an online class called, for instance, Finding Your Own Voice and Own It, which is less, it doesn't have anything to do with glass. It has to do with going from being a confused person who wants to be an artist to having clarity. And I'm trying to focus on that transition, which is something that, by the way, somebody who both of us knew very well, which is Suzuki Roshi, helped me a lot with. So I quote him a lot in this online class that I'm just taping as we speak. I'm doing the video as we speak. I find that area very interesting. In other words, I remember when I was an artist and going to college, and I so badly wanted to be an artist, you know, and I didn't understand a damn thing about art. So I was lost. But I loved art, but I was lost. So at some point, I managed to do my first real pieces that were coming from me. And I remember when that quantum shift happened, how different it all felt. And I have taught now for 50 years, and that question has been asked of me so many times. I have students that say, oh, I love to do what I do, but, you know, I'm kind of vague on what my inspiration is, what I want to say, but I love working and I love doing artwork. So I've been not answering this question for 50 years. Because, you know, I say, okay, let's talk about composition, or let's talk about drawing, or let's talk about such a big question, which is how to find yourself, in essence. I always kind of avoided. Occasionally in one-to-one sessions with special students, I could get into it. But more like personal interviews with students that were long-term students, like students that would do an apprenticeship with me for 2 years. With them, yes, I would approach this question. But recently, as I've been teaching my online glass classes, which are basically for a niche of people that love glass and want to make imagery with it, which is a small group of people, I don't know, maybe 10,000 people at the most. Many of my students, I have had about, so far I have started, I've started a group of, in different groups, 520 students who reside in 20 countries. And more and more they've been asking me, what do I do about my imagery? Because essentially I'm teaching techniques. I don't get into the subject matter. It's like, tell them, like, I'm teaching you a language. You guys can write poetry with it or do sports commentary. It's up to you. But a lot of people have been sort of asking me to get into the issue of sort of at the source, how do you find that certain something that is so unique about yourself and that it makes sense then to do what you do and you love to do. And so I'm making an effort to produce the scores, which should be ready by the end of March, to go online. So other than doing artwork, which I always did that, but I have ceased to do my big, massive architectural commissions. I decided that I'm done with that. The biggest one is the Dome of in Taiwan. That one is, I guess, in meters, it's 680 meters square, 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, and it's the main central station in Kaohsiung for the metro. It covers the concourse level. So, that one is the most famous. I did a small dome in a Michelangelo building in Rome, which is also very relevant. Then I did a lot of artworks that some of them have found their way into major museums over my career. But I thought we were going to talk about Suzuki Roshi. So let's go back to perhaps a topic that you might want to get into more.
Well, yeah, I'd like to hear it all. That's really great.
What I can tell you is, I can tell you the relationship that, having studied with Suzuki Roshi and having been a Zen student for 6 years with him before he died, and then that very intimate period that he forced me into being the director of the building for about 6 to 8 months. It must have been somewhere that period. Something I resisted with all my body and soul, but he simply would not accept no for an answer. And that period actually was critical for me because I had an interface with him at a daily level. And I also saw how he dealt with everyday problems. And that taught me a lot. They bring to him all the problems as the director of the building that I could not solve. And some of the lower end problems I would deal with myself. I wouldn't bring to him. But all of the issues that were internal strengths building when we were all students and living there, and I had no way of solving the problems, I would bring him. And I would see how he would deal with it, with the issues. That taught me a lot.
Well, what sort of problem?
Also, another issue that I remember one. I mean, there were many, but I remember one. For instance, you remember that we had a whole lot of, I don't know if you're one of them, but a lot of people robbed building BART.
Yeah.
The Bay Area Rapid Transit. And those people that were doing heavy lifting and doing that on the construction sites did not want to be vegetarians. I mean, the kitchen was vegetarian.
Yeah.
And they wanted to cook their meat and their turkeys and, in the back kitchen.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of stress because the purist students they thought that was a violation of the spirit of the place and the practice. And those, hey, I'm the diet that I'm eating here, I don't perform. You know, that's just one of them. Another one would be.
Well, wait a minute. What was the solution?
The solution was no solution. He said, we are a vegetarian community, but we accept exceptions. Mm-hmm. We are not rigid. Mm-hmm. We understand the issues of these people. We're not going to judge them. So our official, I mean, I'm drawing memory from 50 years ago, but I remember that he basically did not get on a big moral thing about eating meat at all. He recognized the need to keep it under wraps because a lot of the majority of members of the community did not, were very in line with the vegetarian outlook. But he also said, hey, we've got to cover the needs of these people. And so just figure out the mechanics so that they do it discreetly, and let's not give an ideological solution to the problem. Typical his, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, sort of like not trying to become dogmatic, keeping the spirit of what he wanted to keep going, and at the same time being realistic as to what people needed to do to survive.
Yeah.
So, and I had a long list of problems like that. The only other one I remember that there were two that I remember that were funny. Well, one was when unmarried couples wanted to live in the same room in the building. And I quite honestly don't remember what his solution was so far in the past.
Well, it was allowed.
It was allowed, yes, it was allowed. And the other one, the only other one was little things like he was very nervous when Tatsugami Roshi was about to come. And he was very nervous. He was like, I've never had seen him so nervous. So he was very, very asking me all the details of what, telling me details of what he wanted the ceremonies to be and what everybody's attire was to be. And, at a certain point, he said, you think you could wear some ropes? And I'll never forget it because I exploded laughing. I said, you must joke. You must be joking. Me and robes? And he looked at me and he saw how comic I thought it was, that he started laughing too. And he said, yeah, okay. I said, look, I'll wear a black turtleneck and a gray suit for the big ceremony and I'll be fine. But I remember he was nervous. He had to keep up appearances with the people from his own back home.
Yeah.
And given that we were a regular in probably every aspect,
yeah,
that was the moment of stress.
Mm.
But when I laughed, when he made that suggestion, I started imitating the way priests settle their robes and get settled and all that. And I said, you really want me to do this? And he started laughing, sort of like, he said, I get it. Let's not go there.
Mm.
But, over that period is a period in which I assimilated material and I assimilated teachings and attitudes and things that were in practice what he was giving in lectures. But in lectures, it was much more stylized. In all of these day-to-day issues, you could see how his mindset was translating into actual decisions,
Mm.
and that was very useful to me.
Mm.
But there is certain things that he said in lectures and stuff that have marked my life so completely. Like I'll never forget when he said something of the sort of, now I might stylize it a little bit, but basically, because I've repeated this a lot of times, so I'm not sure if these are his exact words, but essentially made a point that every time you make a choice, you have to make it with 100%. You have to put yourself 100% in. Otherwise, the magic does not happen. So if you're 99% convinced about doing something, the energy and the magic does not happen. So that 1% is not 1%. It's a infinite space between investing your heart and all of yourself, as opposed to sort of investing. And that, he really painted a picture for me of what happens if you invest, which is whether you win or you lose, whether it's going to be good. You're going to either learn something if you fail, but you won't feel bad, as opposed to if you do the 99% investment, there is that doubt that sneaks in, and it becomes kind of poisonous. And that concept, he made it so clear to me that from that age, everything I did, I asked myself that question. And if I was not 100% in, I didn't do it. And now that I've lived with that mindset 50 years, 52 years, because he died in 71, I have to say that it worked.
Yeah.
It really worked.
Yeah.
So, and there were many things that he said like that marked me. Now, it's funny because I have not, I wanted to tell you this. I'm not a traditional Buddhist. I am somebody who studied and learned meditation from Suzuki Roshi and brought that practice of breathing with me all through my life, still do it. But I have kind of metastasized that practice in, when I'm in my studio, where I have a huge studio here working. I love my studio here. I'm actually putting an extension outdoors so that I can paint outdoors with a cover. The breathing is essential. It's a part of the breathing practice. It's part of thinking, being, feeling. The portal of everything is breathing. And so when I was young, I used to be just sitting and lotus. Then, my knees are a little bit bad, so it's half lotus and all that. But sitting in the traditional Buddhist Zen posture, now at 80, that mood or that practice of breathing is part of almost everything in my life. Walking, painting, everything, thinking. There is a way to. So to me, I have not really. There was a period in which, especially at the time when I was studying at Zen Center and living at Zen Center and all that, I would study Buddhism per se, but I have never followed it. So to me, my view is my experience of that teaching through the actual contact with Suzuki Roshi from 1964 to 1971. And you were there, you know what it was like. And it also, apart from giving me ways to make decisions in my career and my personality, but it also helped me readjust all of my profound neurosis that I came out of when I left Europe. Because I left Europe because my family was insane and I couldn't take it. You know, I was born and raised in Rome, and my mother was a Jungian analyst and my father was an architect, both very talented people, but they made a life that was a family that was a hell to live in. And I left at 19. My father gave me $1,000. I got on a boat and I was on my own. You know, it's like that was it. And I went from Naples to New York to California, San Francisco, and I made my life there.
What year did you leave Italy?
I left Italy. I left Naples on November of '61.
Oh.
I got on a bus to go to San Francisco from New York, Port Authority terminal. I know when, because of the moment of the year. It was 5 minutes or 10 minutes after midnight of the new year of '62. So it would be, you know, January 1st, the first 10 minutes of it. I got on a Greyhound from Port Authority to the station on 6th Street and Market, wherever the Greyhound station was then. So so I arrived in '62. My first contact with Zen Center was when Suzuki Roshi came and gave a lecture to the Art Institute, sponsored by Robert Dove.
Yeah.
And I remember just, you know, at that time, people didn't travel that much. I hadn't seen many Asian people in Rome. And except that the Japanese embassy was walking distance from my house. So once in a while, I saw a delegation of Japanese coming out of cars and going into the embassy.
The consulate.
I remember that. What?
The consulate.
The consulate. No, it was an embassy.
No, embassies are in Washington, D.C.
No, I'm talking about Italy.
Oh, I was back in San Francisco. Oh.
No, I'm talking about when I was a teenager in Rome.
Oh, I see.
The embassy was about four walking blocks from my house.
Oh, wow.
The Japanese embassy. But the phenomenon of tourism didn't exist. Japanese and tourism into Italy did not exist. That happened in the 80s and 90s. So when I got to San Francisco, and there were a lot of Asians, but then Suzuki Roshi came and he gave this talk in the cafeteria of the San Francisco Art Institute, and he really looked exotic to me. I mean, I was already a fish out of water coming from Europe, but that was really extreme. But the things he said were so captivating that, you know, first my wife Mary started going to Zen Center, and then she would come home and tell me about it. And then, of course, I was
Mary.
A little bit.
You were married then to Mary?
Yeah, I was,
Oh.
and and uh, and she started going to Zen Center and would come home and tell me everything about it. And I had a negative reaction to it because she wanted to push me, and I didn't want to get pushed. I was peeved, but I I just didn't feel like I was going to do this because my wife wanted me to do it. So she then decided to go to Tasahara for a summer, and I when she went to Tasahara, we went to Zen Center, and Katagiri Roshi taught me how to meditate, and I thought it was wonderful.
Hmm.
So I started practice on my own, and that's how I got involved.
Hmm.
Eventually, you know, and then I moved. I don't remember what month, but I started becoming after all those years, I became the director of the building. I think maybe of November '69 in the new building that Zen Center had bought, and maybe summer of '71, or maybe summer, or maybe even the beginning of fall. Um, I moved to my house in Northern California that I had built. I built a house on the ocean in the wilderness with my own hands, and
Really?
I was very anxious. I was very anxious to move there, and that's what Suzuki Roshi prevented me to do. I was going to live at Zen Center a couple of months while I was getting set up to move up there to my house, and then that's when he sent Yvonne Rand to tell me that she wanted me to be a director of the building. And I said, what? I was going to move into the wilderness and finally move into my house that took me 3 years to build in the summers. And so I postponed that for 6 to 9 months. And I think I moved maybe in '71 in September. But I know that I was in San Francisco 2 or 3 days before he passed,
Hmm.
because I went to say goodbye to him, and Dick Baker was very kind. He let me pass. He says, don't stress him, just be there, and that's it. And it was very meaningful to me. So that's that part. And I don't know what else to tell you other than he has been, well, first of all, he has been a figure that I have painted in some symbolic way all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always represented him, and I've always had him present. There was a moment in which I was in an extreme crisis in '79. Everything was going wrong in my life, and everything, and I was going to lose the studio I was in. No, the clients canceled their orders. I was desperate, and something happened. I had one more month to be in the studio before they would evict me. And having tried everything to solve all my financial problems and everything, I failed. So I said, what are you going to do this month? I mean, you're going to have to get out of here and go and live with a friend and then remake your life. And so I said, what I'm going to do is, what is it that you need? I said, I need to spend a little time with Suzuki Roshi. So I said, just do it. So I made this big watercolor that then became a stained glass window. And the stained glass window ended up in the Metropolitan Museum. But the watercolor is still with me in my studio here. And it's 4 feet by 5.5 feet approximately. And it's an image of the silhouette of Suzuki Roshi with the universe outside. And it was a way to be with him. and since I could not physically go see him, I did this, and I would work every day, and it took me about 2.5 weeks to do this huge watercolor. And true to Suzuki Roshi's teaching, obviously everything that was happening to me, not good, was because of my bad attitude. And you can't fix bad energy, tweaking it, change. So what happened was when I started doing this single watercolor, which was going to be my swan song in the studio, everything started changing in my life for the good. I was paying very close attention to painting with a tiny watercolor brush around every star. And I just got into that world. And by kind of changing the vibrational field, you might say, around me, the world changed. And all of a sudden, clients appeared, money appeared. I was out of it. And he had said, I mean, one of the things that he had said was that I remember, if you want to change the world, change yourself. And to me, that was the living proof of that. Teaching. I did not do it by going out there and selling my artwork. That hadn't worked. But sitting in my studio and turning my attention inward to something that I loved and made sense to me actually turned my world around. So, there are so many ways that his presence has affected my life, but it is not like Buddhism per se. It's my relationship to the practice guided by this man. When I go into a city, I don't go into the Buddhist temples. And so I don't know what to say, but I don't go into the Christian temples either. Even though, unless there's some very interesting art in both, that I might want to look at, in which case, of course, I'll go into any temple of any religion because I'm interested in the architecture and the art in those spaces. But in terms of my, how do you say it? So I don't know if this makes any sense to you, but do you have any questions?
Yeah, your first stained glass work. How did you get into stained glass? And I think I know what your first stained glass pieces were. Why don't you talk about that?
They're in the doorways of the Zen Center between the kitchen and the living room.
Yeah, the dining room.
And the dining room, yeah. Yes. That is really where I connected the dots on what Suzuki Roshi and how he affected my life, because I have to make a premise. When I went from Italy to California, all my dream was to be a painter, a good painter. Let's take a cliche, Picasso, Pollock. For me, Dali, a successful painter in that respect. When I went from Naples to New York and then stayed in New York a month and then went to San Francisco from there, I went to the museum of modern art, and there was an exhibition, probably the last exhibition of stained glass there, but it was of Marc Chagall's windows for the Jerusalem, for a site in Jerusalem. So they made them in France, these windows, sent them to New York to be shown in the Modern Art Museum. And then from the Modern Art Museum, they went to Jerusalem, to the university, to the temple in the university. So I was blown away by those stained glass windows. And I thought that the windows were more beautiful than Chagall's paintings. Not because they were any different, but because the light and the glass made the experience so much more powerful. So that was filed in my mind when I was 19 years old, and then I forgot about it. When I graduated from college, I got a BFA and then an MFA, a Master's of Fine Art, and I was about to move. And Suzuki Roshi caught me and told me, stay here and direct this building. I was so frustrated because I didn't have a studio. I couldn't do art. So by chance, I bumped into a reading that somebody was teaching stained glass in the evenings. So I said, this is something I can do. I can go in the evenings 3 times a week to a place on Potrero Hill, and there's a guy that is teaching stained glass.
Who?
Those 2 windows that are in the doors are my first stained glass windows, done in that class.
And what do they portray?
The hands of Suzuki Roshi joined and the hands of Katagiri Sensei joined in Gasho, and I also incorporated the defect that into the ones of Suzuki Roshi. He had a finger that he couldn't bend.
Yeah.
So I portrayed that too. And Suzuki Roshi thought it was funny. And I showed it to him. And he said, you actually put your 4th finger as part of the... I said, yes, I did. And, it was my first thing. And so, ironically, I got involved with glass because I was forced to be there. And there is a connection there that I had never made until you and I got in touch with each other again. And I said, I never really put together that I had a whole career and a whole life in glass, in Europe and the States and Asia and all this. And it all started because I couldn't paint. And Suzuki Roshi took away my painting studio, and I snuck out and started doing glass. And that then had a logic of its own.
So the city center has on the swinging doors going to and from the kitchen to the dining room with a living sort of area in the back. One of them has Suzuki, one of them has Katagiri. Then if you go out into the hall, at the end of the hall, there's a sort of altar, which is, I don't know what altar that is, the hall altar, the kitchen altar, or maybe it's the kitchen altar. And above there,
yes, I can tell you about that window. That window is between the kitchen and the entry hallway. When you enter the building, you can see all the way down the hallway to that very bright spot.
Yeah.
Now, that window, I can tell you, was my first serious achievement. It must have been 1972 that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is that I realized that that spot was so well backlit. For stained glass to really shine and be beautiful, you have to get strong backlighting and a dark space in the front. Then a stained glass window will really show you its beauty.
Mm.
Like in dark churches, the windows are very bright, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was going to be a wonderful place for me to do a window. And the window is, there is a sculpture in the De Young Museum of a Buddha hand. So the image is a Buddha hand with a cloth. It's a fragment, obviously. It must have been a huge statue. And I love that hand. So I took that hand that I thought was a magnificent sculpture, and I imagined the fingers and the hand to be blue, and then on the cloth, I put some of the symbolism of traditional Buddhism. I think there is a wheel of life, or I don't have it in front of me, so there's a footprint. There's a footprint in there, which would be the footprint of the Buddha, and so I made that window and I donated. That's it. And it's still there.
Huh. Yep, it sure is.
I'm sure that the people at the center have no clue as to the value of the piece. That's okay.
Well, I was the work leader.
Or the other two.
Yeah, I was the work leader then. And yeah, we didn't know the value of it. There was more. There was more than that. There were 2 or 3 large pieces.
Yeah, one went to Tasahara, but it burnt down with the fire at Tasahara.
Right, and one went over to the 340-page building, like 2 buildings down, and is in the entrance hall there. Right?
It was the dawn of my career as an artist, as a glass artist.
Yeah.
So those pieces I'm very attached to.
Yeah. And when you were in Italy and when you were young, growing up, before you came to Zen Center, what sort of sense did you have of like spiritual practice, or how comfortable were you with knowing what it's all about and that sort of thing? Did you feel any calling or anything like that, and if so, was it mainly the solution? Was it directed toward art primarily?
Well, primarily directed toward art, but I always had a streak when I was young, I have to say, when I was young before I came to the States, of a kind of meditative spiritual space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are in Rome, that space, you can find it in a physical environment. It would be very early churches from the 400, from the 500s after Christ. There is a few even before medieval, small churches that I used to like and visit, and they're very simple. You could say that they're very Zen in a way. They were not richly decorated. They were very severe. You might not severe in terms of harsh, but they were simple spiritual environments with gardens. And I used to, by instinct, love being in those spaces. But, the Catholic Church in Rome is like you're at the center of the most Baroque and most rich. I don't think of the Vatican or the Vatican extensions into the reality of being a Roman as anything spiritual. It's very powerful, and I've always had my problems with Christianity. There's something about it that I have a very hard time with.
Mm-hmm.
Not the teachings per se, but my God, the history of Christianity is a bloodbath,
Mm.
and the history of greed go hand in hand. So even though yes, there is definitely something there, and especially in the art, there is something to be said to the art of the Middle Ages, where some of the figures of Christ were magnificently ascetic, and there was definitely, so I was subject to a certain amount of fascination, but it certainly didn't blossom when I was there, and I've always had a bit of a hard time with any organized religion, because I remember even at Zen Center, we were the first generation of the first generation of students under a teacher that was bringing a new, fresh way of seeing the life to us. And even within us, I remember that when I became the director of the building, I got a lot of flack from people that didn't think that I should be that and wanted my place. And, it was ridiculous. I didn't want that place, but some people really did. and therefore, that the beginnings of the mixing of spirituality with personal ambition was already there. I mean, I remember Reb coming up to me, and Reb Anderson, and saying, "Hey, you're coming up too fast." What? I want to be an artist. What? This is a terrible thing. What are you giving me this thing, this attitude? So to me, it was already, I could see the makings of an institution, and all institutions are institutions.
That's right.
Occasionally, and occasionally within the institutions, there are wonderful people that emerge and manage to go beyond the institution because they have a vision and a calling.
That's right.
But other times, an institution is an institution. You're a bishop, you're a cardinal, you could even become pope one day, if you're in the Catholic Church, or, or Monsignor, or whatever. I mean, that's the same thing. The funny thing about it is that I had never seen Suzuki Roshi in that worried loop until he was waiting for Tatsugami, and I think that visit from Tatsugami must have created a lot of stress on him.
Yeah.
Because it brought him back all of the power struggles of Japan, and who was who and who has power, and all that stuff that ultimately he did not really care much about, because he was spending his time with a bunch of Americans who were getting up at 5 a.m. and sitting Zazen.
Yeah.
And, and they were everybody, from Tommy Dorsey to you, to me, to what's his name? The guy who started Apple.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, it came a couple of times, and then I think he gravitated more toward Los Altos and Chino Sensi. But what I'm saying is, we were normal people, and he was interested in us because we were really interested in the essence of what Suzuki Roshi was teaching. And he also found in us people that were not prejudiced. So, like, we were very naive, and that was our strength. If you think of somebody who wants to go into the seminary in Europe, in Italy, for instance, to become a priest, there is a whole series of preconceived ideas, and you're not experiencing Christianity, you're experiencing bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And then within that bureaucracy, you're experiencing a little bit of teaching, genuine teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest is a career.
Yeah.
So I think he was really interested in, you and I know he was really interested in the freshness, in the relevancy of the practice without any goals in mind, just practice.
Yeah.
I have learned something that I teach to my students, and I picked it up from his attitude. His attitude was, it doesn't matter. If you sit, you sit. If you're successful in sitting or not successful, the fact that you're sitting and that you're making an effort to practice is the thing that counts.
That's right.
So I translate that to my students because a lot of my students feel like they're bad artists and they're never going to make it, or they're never going to do something really beautiful or something like that. And I say, no, that's the wrong attitude. Just the fact that you sit down and you start making a stroke, a painting, whatever, that act in itself is a sacred act. There is no judgment on it. It's the intrinsic value of the attitude of making a brushstroke.
Mm-hmm.
That is its content. And don't forget that is what it's all about. It's not so much about the result.
Mm.
And I picked that up straight from his teaching about practice. And it makes complete sense. And I said, I have all of these students all over the world, and some of them are essentially at the level of a PhD in art. Some of them have had museum shows, very advanced. And some of them are just starting. They're just starting being artists at the age of 55 or 65. They're retired. And I say to them, wonderful. Don't feel bad. This is wonderful. Just be there. So, do you have any more questions? Is there anything else you want me to?
Well, you were on a roll there. You were talking about and a wonderful point that you have many students, some at a very high level, some just beginning, and so you're talking about taking the goal orientation out of their approach, and you talked about how at Zen Center, and I think it's really true. Back in the early days, most people were not thinking career oriented. Some were, and you mentioned, I'd say, what Suzuki's a big problem he thought, or a big problem that especially the men had was competition. But you were talking about when an artist, when you make a stroke, don't think, if the painting's going to be good or bad or anything like that. That stroke, once you start doing that, this is, a profound act that's beyond judgment or
Yeah,
something
it's
like
pure
that.
energy. It's pure presence. It's energy. It's presence. It's life. You have no judgment. There is no judgment to be had. I tell my students it's completely okay to be a beginner, and it's completely okay to be experienced. But the issue is not if you're a beginner or experienced, skilled or unskilled. The issue is what you're really putting in with your presence. If you're capable of investing your presence, your sense of self, your who you are, no matter how awkward it is, it's genuine. It's worth doing. It's worth being. And I know it, especially in the field of art. And people are way too result oriented. And the best results, when you look back at the history of art, it's obvious that the people that made masterpieces were totally not there to make a masterpiece. They were there to have an experience, which is an entirely different attitude. And then that experience was so well done that, it turned out into a beautiful thing. But actually, in my experience, where I have done some beautiful pieces, by the time it's done, it's over. I can show it and put it on my resume. If a museum buys it or a big collector buys it, wonderful. It helps pay my bills, my life. It all keeps the mill turning. But once that experience is finished of the making, for me, the thing is dead. I have to prepare to do another one. And the focus, it's like, let's say you sit zazen and you manage the impossible task of sitting zazen for 40 minutes and not thinking, just breathing. Great. I mean, kudos to you. But can you then take that and hang it on the wall and say, "Oh, that's perfect"? No, you've got to sit zazen. You've got to sit zazen again next evening. And maybe you're too worried about everything and you can't do it anymore. It doesn't matter. It's the act of sitting that carries the content, at least. And I translate that in art in very specific ways. And it's really this kind of mindset that I've learned with practice translates very well, and it's immensely useful to me because students have to, when they get into art, they have all kinds of terrible barriers that are totally mind-made. They're total personality fears, and this kind of mindset that I learned by practicing with Roshi has really helped me in teaching, and especially recently, where I'm teaching. I'm dedicating kind of 2 years to do a lot of online courses, and it has been immensely valuable. By the way, I have. Go ahead.
Well, no, go on. You're saying, by the way.
Yeah, I have a very peculiar document which I was going to discuss with you. Um, but I have transcripts of Suzuki Roshi's lectures that were made by Mary, um, and they are on carbon paper on a typewriter.
Well, can you
And
scan them and send them to me?
yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, just do that.
Yeah.
And we can check. There's people I work with. We can check right away and see if there are lectures we have. There were many lectures that were lost. Many tapes were lost. So.
Really?
Oh yeah.
These might actually. Uh, um, these might actually be very valuable, and I've always had a difficult time thinking that I should go to Zen Center. I don't know. It's like I'll send you some. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, Zen Center. You were talking about institutions. I mean, they would probably deal with those okay, but it's risky. Zen Center's always involved in what they're doing at the moment, which and institutions mainly try to preserve the institution, and most preservation that's really important of the Dharma is done by individuals. So I would urge you to send it to me, and then I will send it to Zen Center, but I will have a copy of it. And I make everything available to the public right away. And at Zen Center, they tend to think of it as, something for, to make a course out of, or to, something like that, and it can get stuck away and forgotten.
Yeah, let's keep I'll send you I'll start having a flow of energy between us on this topic, but there is a lot of material.
Well, I'm very interested in it. If you want to take it to a place and have it, like if there's the Kinko's, the equivalent of that, there, a photocopy place, I'd be happy to pay for it.
No, I mean, it's not a question of money. Let me get organized. What I might want to do is I might want to number the pages with a pencil.
Yeah.
Because what these are that Mary used to be one of the people that transcribed for Zen Center.
Yeah.
And I think she transcribed these tapes and kept a carbon copy. And I think what I have is all the carbon copies.
Wow. And they're legible?
They're all typewritten.
Yeah. Carbon copies. Wow, good. All right. Isn't that amazing?
They're very legible.
Yeah. Okay, good. Good. Well, eager to see them. I won't forget this.
We should what?
I said I won't forget this, If I don't hear about it, I'll be bugging you about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, as a matter of fact, maybe you should think about how the consequences of this. I mean, I don't know. Think about it, and I will do what you asked me to do. I will have them scanned.
Yeah.
But we're talking about probably, I don't know, 150 pages.
Good. Well, and we'd check them to see if there's anything in them we don't have. Every once in a while we get something new that way. A librarian at Zen Center, or maybe she was in the office at the time, showed me a box in the library storage that had like 60 Los Altos lectures, most of which were not in the archive. That was like, I don't know, more than 15 years ago. And I stayed up all night there at the city center photocopying them. And there were two, they had, it was like oh, well, I won't go into details about that. Anyway, yeah,
All right,
I'm very
so
interested in that.
Yeah, I will. And what else do you want to touch base on?
What? Say that again?
What else do you want to ask me or touch base on?
Oh, okay. Well, when you, after 1971, when Suzuki Roshi died, what was the trajectory of your life after that? And leading to that magnificent work you did in Taiwan. And you were spending time living in Taiwan. I mean, they gave you a whole place to live in a studio.
Yeah, they did. Let me tell you, right after Suzuki, I have to tell you this. I did teach meditation for a little bit in this Redwoods Monastery that was near me in Northern California. They gave me a room and this was a Cistercian monastery of nuns.
Huh.
And Mother Miriam was really into Zen, and so we became friends. And I was asked if I would teach meditation to a few people, and I had for a period of maybe a year or two, when I went to live there, on Saturday mornings, we used to sit. And I didn't give any lectures or anything of the sort, but I used to sit and organize the sitting in the 40-minute intervals, and then the walking meditation. So that was something I did right after, when I was living in the wilderness, and that would have been 5 or 6 miles from where I was living out there.
Where?
That would be Whitethorn, on the borderline in what is called the Lost Coast.
Oh, yeah.
It would be I was in the last mile of Mendocino County before it turned into Humboldt County.
Uh-huh.
And there is no Highway 1 there. It's the one place in the United States on the West Coast where the Highway 1 does not run along the coast, because the terrain is so rugged. And so I spent a few years in the wilderness there that were very, very, very dramatic for me, because I was living alone in a place that was like no phones, no electricity. The nearest person to me was probably the monastery, that was 6 or 7 miles by air, but by road it was probably more like 10. So that was sort of a confrontation with myself as a cosmic level, because it was really living in the wilderness. I learned skills that Native Americans would have had, how not to get lost in the woods and all stuff like that. But the one thing that really changed my life living out there was experiencing the sky without a city at night with no moon. It was like unreal. I mean, it in the darkness, the cosmos looks amazing. You can actually, if you spend enough time looking at it, you can actually feel the three-dimensional disk of the galaxy if you spend a couple of hours. and just look at it, you actually can experience the Milky Way as a dish, and you can sort of see looking southward the center. Where would the center of the galaxy be, which is a little bit more luminous, and then you see the branch, and it's amazing. And that kind of changed my sense of what life is about. Sort of getting in touch with that level of cosmic dimension, just feeling it, not at the level of thinking, but of feeling. The moon coming up and the sun going down and an eclipse. All of this became not something theoretical. You could actually see the balls in the sky and feel how it's feels like you feel all of these energies that actually are the stuff of the cosmos, but that we, on a daily basis, we don't really get into. So that was my first step after I left Zen Center, and it was a critical one. Then I went to San Francisco and started my career, and glass was it. And from studio to studio, I started first doing projects for people around the Bay Area, and then Bay Area and Los Angeles, and then primarily homes. And then the next decade, I started doing public commissions, still doing my own personal artwork, devoid of uncommission. And then, that commission thing culminated when in 2001, I was asked to do that huge dome in Taiwan that I designed in my studio here in Mexico, where I'm now, but that I fabricated in Germany at a studio called Derek's near Frankfurt, because they had an amazing staff. And that piece is 1,152 panels, one image of a universe sort of spinning with figures and symbols. And it's called the Dome of Light. If you want to check it out on the internet, it's called the Dome of Light, Kaohsiung, Taiwan.
Oh yeah, I've got it on. I've got a section on Cuke.com about you, and it links to that. But
so I had a career, doing stuff in Europe and in the States, and as every decade passed, I did more relevant things. But I've had a career, and now I've invented a language which I am really working very hard to codify so that it can be useful to other people. And right now, I hope my health holds. After I finish this project of codifying this language and perhaps putting out some of my personal content that is I think is personally relevant, like this one, Finding Your Own Voice, which I'm doing right now, and it's going to be out by the end of March.
Mm-hmm.
Once I finish doing this sort of externalizing my knowledge, I hope to have a long period of being in my studio here and doing a last generation of works in my 80s that will be totally loose, meaning in every way. Some transgressive, some mystical, some whatever I feel. I don't feel like I'm not trying to fill my resume anymore. My resume is complete. All I want to do is be here for the rest of the time that I am going to be here.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So that is kind of what I can tell you. I mean, there is a book called that is in Chinese and English, published in Taiwan on the dome, and the book is called. I have to look at it because I have forgotten the title. It's called "The Dome of Light: A Gateway to Dreaming." A tour and the story of the Formosa Boulevard station in Kaohsiung, and there is a small autobiography in that. The book is written in first person, with a couple of introductions by an art critic and the Italian ambassador to Taiwan, or the cultural representative of Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, he's not an ambassador. And then it has a small autobiography. I talk about Suzuki Roshi in the book. And then there is the story of what it took to do this. And it was like a 5-year effort. Then I published many other books. I published a book of poetry and drawings called Mutant. Which is one of my favorite things.
Mutant?
Mutant, yes. Mutant. And it's in print. You can get it at Amazon.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the most, that is me. It's like everything else is my artwork. But that book is born out of the fact that somebody convinced me to turn my personal writing into a book.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is like going behind the curtains of an artist's life. So in a way, it's one of my favorite things I've ever did.
Oh, well, I'll get it right away. Can I get it as a Kindle?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not that I know of, but
yeah.
Nobody's ever tried.
Yeah. Let's see, what was I going to ask you? The Dome of Life book, that's on Amazon, right?
Yeah, there is 2 major books on Amazon. There is Narcissus, Quagliata, Archetypes and Visions in glass and light, or light and glass. I don't remember, but that is the main book on my career. It's published in 2013, and it has the best of 40 years of my work.
Oh.
Then in 2019, I published Mutant. Through the same publishing house, and in 2021, in 2020, and actually in 2019, the other book, The Dome of Light: A Gateway to Dreaming, came out in Taiwan. And I was going to go to Taiwan to inaugurate it, but that was the week that everybody shut down travel. And the big event that was planned under the dome for the book was canceled because of COVID. So that is what happened there. And I was so sorry. I haven't been to Taiwan since then, but
the autobiography that's in that book, can you send me a text of that? You have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, do that,
would you? I have that text somewhere in my computer, and gladly I will. I will share it with you.
Anything like that you can send.
Well, actually, I can send you my poetry. I can send you Mutant. It's on a PDF.
Oh, good.
I
Do
will
that.
send you Mutant on a PDF, and I bet you I can send you. My the copy of that book, of the book, of the Chinese and American book, The Dome of Light, A Gateway to Dreaming.
Well, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I'll send them to you that way. That way you don't have to go through all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I'll do that.
Oh,
The PDF of Mutant, I can do that really easily. The file, the PDF for the Chinese and American book, I might have to labor a little bit in my computer to find it, but I will.
yeah. Well, that sounds great. Well,
Now you tell me something about who's listening to all this, where and how many people, and how are they all tied together?
well, I don't, I don't promote my podcasts. I'd say, probably a few hundred people would hear this. I don't ask people to like and share and spend time promoting or anything. But it will be, I'll I'll send you a link to it as soon as it comes out. It'll be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a bunch of places automatically. And then I'll feature it on my What's New blog, and that goes to Facebook, Cuke Archives, and I'll mention it in my private Facebook, and it'll be mentioned on Instagram. But the main thing is it'll be it's part of the oral written history, the massive one of, what I call Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shinju Suzuki and those whose paths cross his. And so it's just, it's going to be there for people as long as we have a future, I hope, to listen to, and I'll get it transcribed, and that sort of thing.
All right.
It will be available, when you already have a section on Cuke.com, so it will be available in the future for people to go listen to it. Or I don't have these podcasts transcribed yet. That's one thing I'm looking into. And I have limited funds, and even though I have people who put a lot of time into helping me, they're busy doing other things, so I'm not asking them to help with the transcribe. But basically, need to do the first pass of transcribing with voice recognition. Some of the voice recognition software now is extremely good, and then it needs to be gone over.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Zinnies, people, I don't know, anybody who does a Google search on you will run into it probably.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that once you have it all together, I will be actually activating more of my social. I just hired a manager to deal with all of my social media accounts, and he's just starting.
Oh boy, do I need that.
I do. It took a long time for me to do this step, but I have the right person now. And
good.
So within the next 4 or 5 months, all of my media will be streamlined and everything will be up to date. And so if you will give me a link, I will definitely put a link into my system that will get you people listening to this.
Oh, yeah, sure. Um, yeah. Just depends on which link you want. The the um, the home is Podbean, but it'll be on YouTube, and
Okay.
it may be, YouTube might be the best link. Uh, but Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, um,
Okay.
it'll be mentioned on. There'll be a link to it on Twitter. I mean, those things are all automatic. Um, yeah, all right. And
So
um,
where are you in Bali?
Sanur, it's on the
Okay.
edge of Denpasar, and it's on the edge of the busy touristy expat south, but it's a lot less busy and crowded than uh, the rest of it around here. I don't. I I want to be near the action and near tech support and stuff like that, and I don't like getting too. I've lived in the country a lot, and that then I have to drive and stuff. I don't drive anymore. I mean, I can
All
drive,
right.
uh, but
Okay. Well, this is certainly a surprise. When is your book? When is your audio book of his lectures going to be ready?
the audio book of his lectures. Well, there's not an audio book.
Oh, it's going to be a book called Sahara Stories.
All his lectures and all the audio and everything are at shunryusuzuki.com.
Okay.
And that's been shunryusuzuki.com's been going since about 2009, I guess.
Yeah.
And it just keeps being updated. And it links to, there's other, like Zen Center, and especially a group called Engaged Wisdom has worked on his lectures on the audio and transcripts. So it links to their versions. I don't think we link to Zen Center so much because they don't have continuity and their links will go bad. And but Engaged Wisdom has a good collection of them. But everything we've got on shunryusuzuki.com. We don't have one version. We have every version of it that we can find of everything, right? So there might be 3 or 4 different transcripts or 3 different audio files. So it's like an archive.
One of these days I'd like to make a thing of listening to some of his lectures from his voice.
Yeah.
That, because I have your book, I have the other books, I have almost every book that has come out on him, except for the last 2 you mentioned.
Yeah, those last 2, Zen is Right Here and Zen is Right Now. Shunryu Suzuki is listed as the author and me as the editor, although it's just my collection of people's memories of what he said or things that happened with him.
Yeah, but it's so good to hear your voice.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear yours too and talk about all this. And yeah, I was really pleased when you said you'd do a podcast because I really enjoyed doing the interview I have with you on Cuke.com. And then you gave that talk at Zen Center, I don't know, 12 years ago or something.
Yes, and you set it up.
Yeah, from afar. Maybe was I already here in Bali when I did that?
Yeah, you were, I think. But I gave 2 lectures.
Yeah, so it wasn't. We're in our 10th year now. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't left. I just stay here.
Yeah,
Uh, my
travel,
wife,
it becomes a little bit more complicated at our age. I assume that you're more or less my age. How old are you?
I turned 78 a few days ago.
Okay, so you're a little bit younger than me.
Yeah,
You're 2 years younger than me.
yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been good.
Yeah, I think this has been good. This has been great. I really appreciate it. Yeah. And let's stay in touch with email and everything. I'll be eager to get those lectures. I'll be eager to get any links or, that PDF of that book and anything else you can send me.
Yes, I will make sure you get all this material.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
You take care, Narcissus. Really.
Same thing. Same thing here. Take care, David.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So thanks a lot, Narcissus. That was really great. It was really great talking with you. I had a couple of things I wanted to say. Oh, yeah, I wanted to tell you something that happened. Back when I was work leader, and Narcissus said he had given all his original stained glass work to Zen Center. It was not only those two wonderful hand pieces that he did for the swinging doors between the kitchen and the dining room at the city center in San Francisco. There were I think there were three others. And Bill Lane and I were unloading them from the van, and there was a layer of carpet between each one. And I stupidly, after we took the first one out and then loaded it or took it where it was going to go in the city center, we came, and then we took the second one out. Of course, right there on that street, you couldn't leave something unguarded. So we probably had to take it out, lock the van, take it into the building. Maybe we had a third person helping us with the door. At one point, I think when there was only one left there with the carpet over it, I got confused. This sort of thing doesn't only happen in my senior years. And I stepped right in the middle of it. And I remember we were cracking jokes about cracking the stained glass windows we were moving, which made it even worse. And it had to go back to Narcissus to get fixed. And he said he'd do it. But of course, he was a little pissed. I imagine. I never heard he was. He didn't say he was when I saw him. Robert didn't have the money. I mean, he was doing this as part of, a class that he was doing. It's how he got into it was because he didn't have any money. So he needed $100 to fix the stained glass window that I broke. My apologies. So Zen Center asked me to pay for it. And that wasn't going to be a problem. And I had, I'd been pretty generous with my meager amount of money I had from my family with Zen Center. I really had nothing else I wanted to do with it but help start Tassajara and everything. But they wanted me to pay for that. And I thought about it and I thought, does a business ask employees to pay for damage when they're working there? No, they don't do that. But this isn't a business. This is a community. When you hear, oh, we're all family, we're all a community or something, don't worry. That means that it's going to be to the advantage of the business or the institution. So I didn't really in it, but I just didn't do it. I thought, no, Zen Center should pay for it. I'm working for Zen Center. I'm working here. I'm getting practically nothing. I'm getting a stipend, and I'm working in the building. I probably didn't even take a stipend. I don't think I needed it. But and I didn't have a big thing about it being a matter of principle. I just didn't do anything. So finally, Richard Baker talked to me, and he said, they keep talking about this in board meetings. Why don't you just pay for it? I went, all right. But I'm getting back at them now. How many years later? That was 1972. I'd say that was, 51 years later? Yeah, I've been holding that in all these years. Anyway, it did get fixed and it went up. And they're still there, as we talked about. Yeah, they're great. Oh, I just have to tell you, that reminds me of another thing. There was a guy who came to Green Gulch the next year when I was work leader there. And we were working together. He was brand new. He'd just come in, and he was good at working. And Ken Sawyer and I were fixing up bullpens to be our family units up at the end of Spring Valley. When you walk into Green Gulch, it's the valley up to the left. And it was at the very end. And it was, he spent months on it and had a compost privy. Oh, it's beautiful, incredible work. We did we spent a lot of time doing like artistic type work and, nice woodwork. And, I had I can't get into that now. Pardon me. But anyway, I mean, it's already a tangent. So this guest student that was there, he had a really good skill saw, and I was working on some stuff. I asked him if I could use it, and he said, yeah. He said, or it might have been a drill or something. I think it was a skill saw. He said, yeah, you can use it. I've got to go, to chanting class or wherever. And if anything happens to it, I want you to pay for it. I said, oh, yeah, don't worry. If anything happens to it, Green Gulch will take care of it. He said, no, I want you to pay for it. He was rather headstrong. So that idea not only comes from management, but from fellow workers. Okay. So I really appreciated that. Let me tell you, Narcissus, Robert Quagliata's Cuke page, there is tons of stuff. There's a lot of memories of Shunryu Suzuki and links to different things. He's been an incredibly productive person, and he's great at storytelling and telling what happened to him. So anyway, appreciate him coming on. I appreciate your listening, and until we meet again, this is DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggett Bandita and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.